Welcome to Sacred Magic. Violet is on a quest to bring sacredness back into our everyday experiences. Anyone can have an extraordinary life when they are able to tap into their sacred magic within. Violet and her guests will be sharing their divine passions, inspirations, and stories of connecting with their sacred magic. We are so happy you have joined us today. Let's get started with your host, the magical creator of Discover Your Spiritual Gifts, Vialet Rayne.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sacred Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Vialet Rayne, and I have our guest back. She's been on the show several times, Joy Vernon. She's an astrologer and tarot reader in Washington. She formerly served as the organizer of the Denver Tarot Meetup and the Denver Tarot Geeks, and now runs the great Seattle Tarot Meetup. Her specialty is esoteric tarot, which layers astrology and qabalistic symbolism onto the traditional images. And she has lots of blogs on her website, so definitely check out the description to go find out more information. She's just a vast place for information, and I love that. So Joy, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me again. I always just love our chances to catch up every once in a while, and it's very fun.
It really is. So somebody that wants to learn tarot, you talk about a different style of tarot, which is the esoteric qabalistic. What is the difference in that and just reading and doing tarot readings?
You know, it's interesting, and one of the reasons I use the word layer, it layers these things onto the images, is because I feel like, and I think this is true of everybody, no matter what tradition they're following, we layer things on to the way we read the cards. And so now there's probably two primary styles, and one is to base your interpretations of the cards on the card images, and one is to memorize meanings and fortune-telling meanings. And I learned to read the image on the card. And so in that, ironically, I'm considered like a very analytical reader, a very educated reader. But what I learned was what is actually the most intuitive way of reading. And then my students tell me that they feel my style is very intuitive. And so we all start with some of those basic things. But I start with the image on the card, read those images as a story, just like we're all taught to do. I think everybody's taught that part. And then these layers inform the reading. And so whether it is an astrological reference that comes in and makes me think, oh, is this a timing thing? Or, maybe we see a Jupiter card and I'm like, oh, was I just talking to you about Jupiter and Cancer? Maybe this is a timing thing that this will happen when Jupiter goes into Cancer. Or maybe if I've done a chart reading with you already, then maybe we'll see some of your chart placements show up in the reading. And it's just like boom, boom, boom. This is saying of the whole chart reading that we did, this part, and this part are the most important because now they're coming out in the cards too. And so that's a lot of what I'm doing in terms of astrology. In terms of Kabbalah, again with the layers, that tends to be a little more subtle because I'm getting the information from the symbols that I know that are references to Kabbalistic philosophies, but I'm not going to explain that all to you. What I'm doing is it just comes out as again, it informs the way I speak about the cards, and it adds usually more of a spiritual layer or spiritual interpretation. I might, if that comes up, you won't hear me saying, and the Kabbalistic meaning for the card is, what you'll do is probably see me sitting back and saying, one of the things that I'm thinking about as we talk about this, has to do with the way, and it might be something about spirit, or it might be something about the four worlds, but I might not even use those words even. And just kind of bring that in. And I think that can inform my reading style just the way a beginner reader is informed by their own personal experience. And they might sit back and say, this reminds me of something that happened to me. And they might be able to share a really relevant story. Their reading is still informed by their life and their experiences. They may or may not be using the same, these esoteric examples that I'm using, but they're still informed by other things beyond the, just that one rectangular piece of paper on the table. So I think that's to me how I would probably describe it.
So what about that person? Because I get this a lot. My students come in and they're overwhelmed with trying to learn tarot. Like, it is such a big area that they block themselves from even getting started because, wow, that's just, and I know in my alchemy class, I require them to start working with tarot a little bit because I want them to have that foundation of what is the Fool card and what is the Two of Swords card. And, I can say those cards and literally see them pop in my brain, right? Because you and I do tarot. And so just by mentioning that card, I know exactly what it looks like. Like, I don't have to have it here. It just pops in my head. But what do you tell students that just feel really overwhelmed in learning tarot because of all the symbolism and all the layers that can go in? Because anyone that's ever studied it, the colors mean something and the angels mean something that are in it. And every little symbol on the card has meaning to it, right? So what do you tell your students that come in and go, I really would love to do this, but I just feel very overwhelmed?
Well, I teach in a very different style than most teachers teach. And I have something on my website. If you click on the classes page, you can find my quick start tarot kit. And I teach entirely based on the imagery. And so the simplest way of describing my style is I have people look at the cards and there are 5 questions. Who is in the card? And for this style, you need to use the illustrated or scenic tarot decks. And so they have a picture on each card. The Two of Swords is not just 2 swords there or 2 crossed swords, but it has a picture of somebody and they're holding a sword or holding 2 swords, or they're, typically, in the Rider-Waite-Smith or something, they're seated with water behind them, and the swords are they're holding the swords crossed in front of them, and they're blindfolded, and it's night, there's a moon in the sky. And so there is a person who is doing something, but it doesn't have to be the Rider-Waite-Smith image. It can be any image. There'll be a person or an animal, and there'll be 2 swords or 2 blades or 2 something sharp, or maybe 2, because swords are air, it could be 2 butterflies or 2 bird feathers or something. But those are the things that you want to focus on. So who is in the card? What are they doing? And so in this case, we see a woman that's very balanced. And we see her arms are at rest. She's not threatening anybody. She's not trying to even protect herself. She is in balance. and it's a Libra card, but you don't need to know, because Libra is about balance, but you don't need to know that because the card shows you that she is in a balanced place. So, what is she doing? She's sitting in a symmetrical way that looks balanced. And then where is she? She's outside near the water. And then what are the props and decorations in the scene? And then you start to explore it on your own. What does the water mean to you? How do you feel when you're near water? It's like, oh, I like being near water. I feel more relaxed. Okay, so she's relaxed, and then what are the props and decorations? There's not a lot. It's a simple image, but she's got a blindfold on. What does the blindfold mean? How do you feel when you're blindfolded? Maybe you're a little bit more on alert. Maybe it's a feeling of, again, maybe she's like, I'm so comfortable, I can put my sleep mask on and just meditate here. It's kind of looking at the card and feeling it and feeling, what do you feel with this? And then you don't have to memorize, what does the blindfold mean? What does the moon mean? What does the water mean? What do the rocks mean? What does the shore, she's on like a key or some kind of cement dock or something like that. You don't have to memorize all of that stuff. You're just exploring the image using these simple questions. And the fifth question is, what's the mood or atmosphere? So who is the person? What are they doing? Where are they? What props and decorations are in the scene? And what mood or atmosphere do you feel in the scene? And once you've got those 5 questions down, boom, you can read any card from any deck and not have to worry about, there is some right way to do this, and if I'm not doing it that way, I'm doing it wrong. So it's really very, very simple. Anybody can do this like that.
I love that. I love that explanation. Now, the other thing that my students get all caught up in is when you have multiple cards. So you're reading the story, right? You're reading the story. Like my warriors have to read runes in a story. Like there's 3 or 4 runes. It's the same thing with an oracle card or a tarot card or anything else that you're using as a tool. What's the overall story of all the elements that you have in front of you? How do you teach your students to get really comfortable in seeing what the story is trying to tell them?
And I love that. And I've got many answers to this question because I get this question from my students too. And this is, in some ways, it is the essence of transforming cards into a reading. And so it is the one thing that every single reader must be able to do. And on the other hand, it is the most important thing, the most difficult thing in all of reading. And every single reading that falls flat because the reader didn't find the story. And so it's the one thing that we're always striving for and always trying to find and go deeper with and improve upon. And so the first thing that I do, and I actually teach this part prior. So those 5 questions I just told you, that's advanced compared to this other thing that I teach. The other thing I teach is, and I recommend this above I do not recommend pulling a card a day. I don't recommend doing even like laying cards out and trying tarot readings. I never have people look things up in the book ever. The book can be a really good resource for a number of reasons, but it should be a resource that helps explain the image and gives you an idea. Like, this is a little bit of a side note, but there was one deck I was working with, the Hidden Realm Tarot, gorgeous deck, really full of deep kind of fairy magic. And there was a child, it was one of the page cards, and the child was holding something close to their chest, and they looked a little scared. and it looked like they were holding a tangerine. And I'm just like, what the heck? Why do they have a tangerine? And what is going on in this card? And that I turned to the book and oh, it's a dragon egg. That's what the book explained. I was like, okay, it's a dragon egg, not a tangerine. And so that's what the book is good for. But going back to what is the most important thing to do, the best way to learn tarot, and I have at least 2 blog posts with that title because I keep hounding on this, is learn to tell stories from day one. And this is the thing, mothers will do this with their children. They'll just hand a deck of cards to their kids and say, oh, let's tell stories with it. And a kid can do this. It's adults that can't figure this out. Children are great at this. And so you just look through the deck and you think about what happened to me yesterday, or what happened to, if you're doing it in the evening, what happened today? What is something that happened to me? What did I do? And it can be, I don't know, yesterday, what did I do yesterday? Sometimes we're like, seriously, I did nothing. But I talked about some business things with my boyfriend after he got home from work. And I was imagining like, what are some business growth that I could do? And well, this card comes up because I have to, it's like, is this going to be too personal? So I'm all excited and I'm like, I could do this and I could do this. And then my boyfriend's like, I'm sorry. He always takes a nap when he comes home from work. He's like, I am so sorry, but I want to give you my full attention and I am about to fall asleep. He's like, can you please just give me a little bit to take a nap and then we can talk about this more? So, my boyfriend fell asleep while I was talking about things, and maybe here's a card. And I would normally look, I'm just trying to grab things quickly. In fact, I can probably do this. This is good. I just look through the cards and try to find things that express what I want to express. And so one of my things is I want to have more of a cozy time with my clients. One of the things about tarot readings is that they're spread out on the table. So unlike a psychological counseling session where people sit back and just chat about things or share their experiences, with the tarot reading, you have to lean forward because you're looking at the cards. And so but I want more of a cozy feeling. And I equate that cozy feeling with more of an intuitive experience. And this to me captures that. It's a high priestess card, but the colors are cool, and her third eye seems to be glowing and kind of activated a little bit. And there's even like some kind of wheel or gears or something behind her head, which is like, I want my gears to be able to turn and to put more things together, put things together on more levels. And then, I've got the sun. And so I was excited. This is what I wanted. And so this was my imagination and my like vision of, oh, I see this and I want it to be bigger because the sun is so big and it's so central and it's shining my light and I want to do more of this. And then my boyfriend was like, I am so sorry, but I've got to fall asleep right now. And so that's a little story yesterday. And I don't need to know anything about those cards. It does not matter in the least what they mean because they mean something to me. I see this big light and that represents my excitement. I saw this woman in these cool colors with her third eye glowing and it represented my intuition to me. I saw a man asleep and I thought of my boyfriend. And so, that's the first thing that you do is use these images to tell your story, tell simple things every single day, tell simple experiences of your life. And if you do that every day, these cards start to gain meaning to you. They mean something because they remind you of your life and the experiences that you've had. And it keeps the cards realistic and practical from day one, and not talking about airy fairy up in the air, up in the heavens. Like, I love spiritual stuff. I'm up there all the time, believe me. But when I'm doing a reading for somebody, my goal is I've got to get them down into a practical experience and a practical solution. And so I need to keep those cards grounded. So that's the main thing that I recommend. Like I said, I have other things, but I don't know how much time we have.
Yeah. I love that. Do you use different decks for different types of readings, or do you stick with the same deck? So I know for me, whether it's Oracle or Tarot, I use different decks for different types of readings, or I just get a hit. Today I'm using this for this person, or today I'm going to use this. Do you find that you do the same thing, or do you stick to the same deck all the time?
I definitely mix it up, and I do sometimes get those hits of what I think a person might like. I will say, that said, I this is the Legacy of the Divine Tarot by Ciro Marchetti, and I've been using this as my main client deck for a pretty long time now. Um, I'm I'm not gonna say for sure when I came into it, but I think it was maybe first published in 2012, and so it was maybe a year or two after that. So I've been probably using this one deck for a good 10 years. But I've had other client decks that have cycled through, so I do tend to gravitate to a single deck. Um, I've used the Morgan Greer for my clients. I've never really used a Rider-Waite-Smith for my clients, but I have used Rider-Waite-Smith derived decks, and the Morgan Greer being the main one. I use that for many, many, many years. I've used Tarot of the Old Path. I still use that with clients. Robin Wood Tarot, what's that cute little deck? I can't think of its name right now, but it's smaller in size and has very kind of cherubic looking children and very gentle scenes. Hanson Roberts deck. And so I've gone through a lot. Sometimes it's a question of place. Like, I actually have many copies of this deck. So I have one here at my home office. I have two or three actually at my actual office where I see my clients. And I'll have, when I used to do phone work on a psychic line, I'd keep a deck right next to the phone, but I'd have a different deck, in my bag that I would take in to see in-person clients, things like that. So yeah, there. But yeah, I tend to kind of stick to the same deck. I sometimes let people choose, just lay out 3 decks in their bag and just like use your intuition, which deck looks best to you, just feeling the energy of it through the bag type of thing. I'll sometimes do that with people. So I mix it up, I guess, but I think I tend to gravitate towards a single deck.
Every reader has their own style. I've had readers where they'll put out 3 to 4 decks and they'll ask the client, pick a stack. Which one are we going to work with today? I've had readers that'll use a tarot deck, but then they'll throw oracle cards in to give it an extra layer of information. It really depends. I use an Angel Tarot deck and a Winnie the Pooh Tarot deck, and I use Rider-Waite. But I love the Winnie the Pooh deck because it's fun and playful, and clients seem to resonate. But when I'm doing angelic Reiki, I'll use my angel tarot deck because it makes sense that they go together, right? And so I think everybody, it's in what is your style? Like, what are you doing? So share with us, Joy, because I know you offer classes. Do you offer those online? And what kind of sessions do you offer? Because somebody listening to this that would really love to learn tarot, besides reading all your blogs and information that you have, I'm excited. I'm going to go look at that. And if I'm given permission, I'll share that information with my students because they really struggle with learning tarot. So any tips that I can give them, I love to share because all of us have our own style of how we do things. I was a journal person. So when I got my tarot, I sat and journaled a lot about the cards, but that really helped me. That was my style of learning.
I love that. Yeah.
But share with us what you offer for your clients, your students.
Absolutely. I mean, I've got, first of all, I think the main way, the most entry level thing for me is my meetup group. And it was, I had called it the last last time I talked to you, it was the Greater Seattle Tarot Meetup, but I've changed it to the Greater Seattle Astrology Tarot Reiki Meetup. And that's just to reflect all the things I didn't want to start. I was already doing tarot and astrology for it, and I wanted to add in some Reiki meditation groups, and I didn't want to start a different meetup, so I've changed the name. But we do both every month. I do an in-person tarot meetup, an in-person Reiki meditation group, and I have 1 to 2, sometimes more Zoom meetings. And so that's the easiest way to kind of get on board with me, and it's a really good entry level way. A lot of them are free, not all of them, but a lot of the meetups are free, and the ones that cost are very, very low cost. And then other than that, I do have some online things like the instant access online type of thing, which is that tarot quick start tarot kit. And then I'll occasionally offer multi-session classes, and those have been online recently. So it's just a question of getting on my newsletter, getting on my meetup, getting on my newsletter, and finding out what's coming up and what's going to happen is really my newsletter shares it comes out at least once a month, sometimes 2 or 3 times in a month, but it's not overly frequent. It's not every day. It's not going to spam you with stuff, and it's always going to give you some good things. But I always share any videos that I made during the month, any podcasts that I was on, the blog posts that I wrote, any upcoming classes and meetups and talks that I'm doing. All of that's going to show up in my newsletter every month. So that's the best, probably the very best way to get on board with my stuff.
I love that. I love that. You know, we used to have her in Denver, and so it was great to have her really close, but she still comes to Denver periodically. And then when she comes, she's so busy she can't see anybody because everybody wants to see her. And so then she gets all booked up, and so the rest of us don't get to see her. But she is busy, and that's amazing. She has a big following. She was here in Denver for a long time, and really had an amazing reputation in Denver, and so everybody loves her. So joking aside, when she comes, she really has to come for a long period of time because we can't get enough of her. So we really got to see her. And I'm lucky enough that I get to talk to her on the podcast occasionally. So I get her back on the show whenever she'll come back on. And we just talk and have a good time, just like today. So thank you so much, Joy, for taking the time to be on the show and to let us know what you have going on and what's happening. You know, we love to connect with you and just find out more about what's happening for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, those that are watching, thank you so much for taking the time to listen, to watch on whatever channel you are connecting with us on. I hope you'll like, comment, and follow. We love to hear from our listeners that are out there listening. And I want to wish you a sacred and magical week that is filled with blessings and possibilities. We love to see you on the show. So thanks for taking the time today to spend some time with us. Have a great, great week.
Thank you for joining us. To find out more about Vialet, head over to discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. You can also send a personal message to Vialet through email, violet@discoveryourspiritualgifts.com. If you love the show, subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Until next time, remember, we are meant to have abundant and joyful lives. We hope to see you soon at Discover Your Spiritual Gifts.